You are with yourself every moment, so why would you not be your number one priority? Quieten the mind and ask yourself this question. Will you have any regrets? I do think of death because it gives you an appreciation for every day. You become grateful for every moment. You realise how precious life is. We're all searching for something. How do you want to be remembered?
We've talked about the life wheel, personal growth. How does this roll into the business side of things?
For any business that's watching this, it's a yes or no answer, but do you have a clear roadmap? It's not a business plan. Do you have a strategy mapped out right across the wall of where you are, what you're going to commit to doing in the next 1, 3, 5 years? It's the concept of being an operator to an entrepreneur, but then that's the life cycle that we take people through. The Pathway Mastery is about how do we find the human being that's deep inside. The podcast is to give you a sample of how your life could change by self-discovery. We believe more in you than you believe in yourself, and that is the power of the Pathway Mastery. The Pathway Mastery, why are we doing this? This is episode 1. Pathway Mastery, because people are continually asking me, what is the Pathway Mastery? So I thought, let's do a series of episodes in partnership with Podsters to articulate that story and explain to the world what is Pathway Mastery and how is it so unique and different. But we would need to start somewhere. So we came up with 12 themes that articulate where it started, where's the midpoint, and where's the end point. And that's similar to how you view life. So what was that first question, Doug?
My first question would be, this obviously didn't happen overnight. It didn't just spring to life one day. How and when did this all start to come together?
There's 3 ways I can answer that question. You know, I went for a walk this morning and I was thinking, what have you done with your life that's empowered you to do the things that you've done, even when you look at the 1% Mindset book? Where does it come from? And we'll talk about this later on in the podcast, but I would say state has got a big part to play in it. What I mean by that is, where do you live emotionally? Pathway Mastery is about connecting to self. But what does that mean? It means about what emotional state do you live in most of the time. And the reason why that's important is because when you're in a good state, you make good decisions. And when you're in a good state, you can be creative and you can be innovative. That's not what the Pathway Mastery was formed. But you have to start there. You have to understand the strategy for my life. And I remember saying this at the age of 12, 13. What is richness in your life, Stevie? To feel good for no reason at all. And if I can feel good for no reason at all, that would be a rich, fulfilled life for me. So then I asked myself, how are you going to manage that? Because you filter and process so much information in a day. How can you control all the thoughts that you have? How can you make sense of who you are? So the first thing was, what I'm saying is, where does the majority of a human being live emotionally? And I realised when you live in a state of unconditional love, you end up going through these layers within your brain from theta to gamma, where you start to create things and manifest things within your brain of what you're going to do with your life. But the question was, where did it manifest itself from? 1982 had a profound effect on me because by that time I had experienced 3 things in my life that you wouldn't expect to experience at the age of 12, which was death, people close to you who'd passed away. And the reason why that's a profound experience in your life, because at that age, you then start swinging on a swing, asking yourself, how long have you got? And that, I remember that, saying that to myself. I remember, and it's in the 1% Mindset book, my nana died at 4, and a close friend of mine who lived 3 doors down from me, he passed away at the age of 7. He died of leukemia. I remember going in to see him for the last time, and then I remember being told a couple of days later that he had passed. I then obviously remembered watching a movie called Scrooge, which was about the past, the present and the future and the three ghosts. And in that movie, they take you to the end. And when they take you to the end, they're basically asking you from where you are to what time you've got left. What are you going to do with that time? So these things had a profound impact in my life that I always thought from that day to right now and right to the day I die, I do think of death. Because I think it does what it does to you is it gives you an appreciation for every day. You become grateful for every moment and you realise how precious life is. And even from experience that back then to continually experience a lot of death throughout your life with friends and family, sometimes even from the point of view of somebody taking their own life, it takes you to deeper levels of appreciation of what you experience. So 1982 for me, watching a movie Scrooge and experience people who have passed, I've always had that concept in my head. Who am I? What do I want? And what is the meaning of my life? Because what I realised was looking at people around about me, having 9 jobs between the age of 12 to 16 had a profound effect on me as well, because what I was paying attention to, I was now becoming obsessed, not just with myself. For me to work out myself, I was working out who people were around about me. And you were looking at all walks of life and you were just paying attention to where people lived emotionally, but you also paid attention to what they told their story. What were they telling the story to themselves and what were they telling the story to anybody they met? So what was the internal dialogue to what the external dialogue was? And I found it very interesting to the point of view I became obsessed. Then I started looking at time and started looking at patterns, looking at how people did things the exact same way. Parked the car in the same place, walked in the same direction, were doing things at the same time, and it was becoming Groundhog Day. And just as an observer, with no opinion, having no critical opinion about anybody, I just became fascinated that people, what defined somebody's life was the people that they surrounded themselves with, but also the environment they came from. Some people that I know who grew up in an environment that might be a village. When you think of planet Earth, I know people who have never left that village. And that's what's defined their life. There's no right or wrong to that. It's just trying to work it all out, because I think we're all searching for something. And people either settle just to exist, or people become shepherds or become adventurers where they want to go to places all over the world. Because even when you get to the end, for what there is to know from the bottom or the depths of the ocean to the deepest part of the solar system, you won't even scratch the surface for what there is to know. So I became fascinated with that. And at the age of 12, 13 as well, I became obsessed with astronomy. And when you become obsessed with astronomy, there's a moon over there spinning. I used to look through a telescope at the age of 13 and look at the moon as if I was on the moon. It was that powerful, the telescope. So when you become obsessed with the brightest star in the sky, you become obsessed with all the planets, you become obsessed with the solar system at 13, you become less significant because you start to realise what there is to know against what there is that you don't know. 2005 as well had a profound... And what we're talking about here, by the way, is we're talking about pinnacle moments in our life, because when you ask deep questions and you become very curious about life itself, it then becomes a much more interesting playground. And in 2005, I had built a group of companies in 2 years, and high growth team of public sector became intrigued, came and seen me, gave you support, but also asked the question, how did you do that? Well, between 12 and 16, I had 9 jobs, and I just studied people who ran successful businesses, and all I did was model that. And that's why the group of companies have been formed, because it's like a game of chess. You need to become the chess player. And she looked at me and she says, have you ever thought about coaching companies? And 2 things happened, which was a pinnacle moment. I did master classes to a group of 10 companies at a time every week. and went into partnership with public authority to support companies where they came and I just facilitated information in different themes of business. And at the same time, they asked me, do you want to go to America? And I went to Boston and New York and studied and modelled excellence in a learning journey with some of the top companies in the world in New York and Boston. And at the same time, I was being coached by about 4 psychologists. So you can imagine what was going on in my head at this time. From 12 years of age to studying astronomy to now modern business, but at the same time working with 4 psychologists to understand me. The world was becoming a very interesting place to live. And what I quickly realised was I was seeing more than other people, because I was starting to use my whole brain in terms of really understanding who I was, especially from an emotional place. Because again, what I said at the start, the most important thing for me is to feel good for no reason at all, because really all you have is right now. But what I would say is the power comes from living in a place of acceptance of yourself, where you love yourself. You give yourself rituals in the morning where you're with you for the rest of your life. You're with you every moment of your life. So when you look at Team 1 and you invest in yourself, and that's the most important asset that you will have in your life. But then the magic comes from the other teams in your life. Because if you have unconditional love and you live to what's important to you and your values, and you live to the people that you have around you, where it becomes absolutely unconditional love, there's a power there in that emotion. When you experience, see, this is really, really important, because this is something that I've never spoke about before, is that word love. Who teaches you who you are? Who teaches you what you want? But who teaches you how to love? It comes from generation to generation. It comes from what you read. It comes from what you watch. It comes from what you observe. But who teaches you how to love yourself? Who teaches you how to accept yourself? Who teaches you how to show love? And I started doing it with a 3-chair exercise. The chair was me, and then there's another chair opposite you, and then there's a third chair as an observer. And you sit in the chair and you look at the other chair, but the other chair is called love. So what you do is you look across the chair and you say, what does that word mean to me? But it becomes powerful when you go and jump into the love chair. Because when you jump into the love chair and you look through the eyes of love back at yourself, that's where you get validation of what love is. That's where you get validation of who you really are as a person. Because when you can live your life through your heart and not your brain, the left side of the brain, the voices that are in your head that's telling you this is your beliefs, this is your limitations. If you can become somebody that gives every single person who you don't have a relationship with, imagine if this world was that everybody woke up in the morning and basically said I'm going to show my heart to every human being on the planet. What would the state of the world be today? That's what I chose to do. And one of the things I would say to you that was unique about my life is that at 12 years of age, I had 9 jobs because I knew education wasn't doing it for me. But what I realised was brought me alive was people, because I was obsessed with them, but also making money. And I remember going to this first customer on a Sunday morning. It was 6:30. She opened the door and I gave her the papers. But there was a wee voice in my head that said, you need to go and chap that door again. That woman doesn't look happy at all. She was an elderly woman. And as I chapped the door and opened the door, she opened it and she says to me, what's up, Stephen? I said, no, what's up with you? She said, listen, I'm fine. She says, I've got no bread or milk, and I was looking forward to reading the papers with toast and a cup of tea, but I forgot to pick up bread and milk yesterday. I said, right, have a nice day, and she shut the door. Without even thinking about it, I put the bag on the side of her house and I sprinted to the shop because she didn't have a car, and the newsagent was about 3/4 of a mile away. But when I ran back down with a pint of milk and bread, there was a voice in my head that said, Pay attention to what she looks like when she opens the door. Pay attention to what's presented to you and mirror what was presented to you when she opened the door the first time.
A different reaction.
Different reaction. Her eyes glared. Her texture on her skin changed. Her breathing changed. Even how she stood changed. She was glowing. But she asked me a question. Why would you do that? I said, because I can.
Right.
Because I can.
And we all can.
Yeah, if ever did.
Like you said, what a world it would be if we all recognize that we can.
In that moment when she shut that door, you see, I can go back and feel that right now. But I can also feel other people's emotion. And that's what I've been able to do my whole life. Feel another human being's emotion and then ask them through humour, is that what you're meant to be? Or asking them, who are you and what do you want? And then guiding people through a journey for them to self-discover who they really are. But when you feel somebody else's emotion and then you make a difference to somebody's life, in any shape or form, it's like a drug. In that moment at 12 years of age, I basically said to myself, I want to experience this as often as I can for the rest of my life. And that's what we've done for nearly 40 odd years.
Right.
We're irrelevant because our life's work is about what we do for others. And that is a life that's truly lived. If you can do that, make yourself irrelevant. So from 2005, the coaching company was manifested through a moment of somebody observing what I did with building a group of companies who basically said, go to America, model excellence, go and enjoy a learning journey. At the same time, you've been developed by psychologists. But 1992 is when the real magic happened. Experiencing that moment that you're given to another human being, I came alive. And at every opportunity, and let me be clear about this, it doesn't matter if I'm doing something for somebody who's sleeping in the streets. It doesn't matter if I'm holding a door open for something. It can be anything. Right. That's the feeling that you want to grab hold of as often as you can in a day, because there's no other feeling like it, not even how much money you can have in the bank.
Yeah, it's all about connecting with people.
Connecting with yourself, connecting with people. But it's also, and I'm not just saying this, and I'm going to think carefully how I can say this, the people around about you fuel you.
Mm-hmm. Energy.
Me and Lesley have been together for soulmates for 33 years. I can tell you what she was wearing. See, the things where I show emotion, I'll put in, because that's real. That's authentic. So the concept of where the fuel comes from, which I never explained properly when you asked me the question, where does the pathway mastery come from? It comes from your family. It comes from loving yourself. It comes with the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. It comes from, well, it's your stepchildren, your children, your family, your friends. It's the people that are in your circle, because see, when you see belief in their eyes, the world better go out the road, because that's where you take your fuel from. You take your fuel from the people around about you, because that's where you absorb. You see it in their eyes, the support they give you, the belief that they give you, and then it reinforces what you're doing inside your head, and it reinforces. That's where the analogy of the teams in your life come from. Team one is you. Invest in you every single day to discover who you are and the meaning of life. Team 2 is me and Lesley. Nobody gets in there. That's our sacred space. And then team 3, you go through all the teams in your life because they're unique. And you take fuel from investing in yourself and investing in all the teams in your life. It does for me, eh?
Yeah, when you get that love, honesty, trust and respect, it works. And that positive energy around about you and your family. And you have.
Yes, I have.
So you talk about, like, I've heard you mention before, like a blueprint for your life. Can you expand on that?
The best way of expanding on that is to give you an example. If I pick up the book and I was to show you that, that's probably one of the tools that I use for my own life. It evolves and it grows. It's a growth plan. And one of the things I've observed looking at people's stories and what they believe, I've realised that when they're not emotionally free and they're not in a good place, it's because their blueprint and their life map is mismatched. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. I took a phone call 2015, and it was a chief exec who asked me, can you see my finance director? I said, no problem. I said, I don't need to know what's the matter. He said, what? I don't need to know. He says, but how are you going to be able to help her? Just send her to my office, and as long as she wants to come, don't send her. Say to her that you've got an opportunity for her, that somebody wants to help you because we can. And she came. And as soon as she sat down, I asked her one question. And this is going to sum up that question that you've asked me. Blueprint against life map. I watched her park the car. I watched how she was walking to the office. I watched how she was kind of self-talking to herself. And then I could see her mind was busy. She came in, brought her in, gave her a glass of water, sat down in front of her. She was really, really nervous. And I said to her, how do you know how to be nervous? Then she starts laughing. Always important that when you work with somebody.
Break the ice a bit.
Break the ice, break the pattern, but get them into good state. We don't make good decisions when we're in bad states. So it's a concept that we'll talk about this later, about left brain, right brain, and all the brain resonances you can go into and emotions. But with this woman, I asked her one question and changed her life. And the one question I asked her was, can I go first? And she said, on you. And it wasn't a who am I question. What's life supposed to be like? And she said, boom, I'm supposed to be married with 2 children. And I said, are we? And she says, no, I'm not. And then she started to go in to tell her story, and I interrupted her and I said to her, when did you start dreaming about that? And she says, 13, lying in my bed, manifesting what I wanted life to be like. So our nervous system, which is your blueprint, is playing that movie, repeat through your mindset. But unfortunately, she was older than 30. She was now in her 40s. She's still not married. She's still not got children. But nobody had explained that to her because we don't understand the concept of how the 3 minds work. But the concept of asking a question to ask her, because what you want in life and what I want in life is different. What you class as happiness and what I class as happiness is different. What makes somebody angry and what makes me angry will be different. And that's why facilitation of information through Pathway Mastery, it's a safe place to answer questions or take you through something, a bespoke journey that's going to get you. That's what I call, what would you call it? Stream. I used to go up the Glen, and it's a glen in my village, and when you go up, there's a stream that goes right through the village. And I used to catch trout in my hand. And when I was with David, the boy that I used to do this with, he went further up and he came back down and he's like, what are you doing? And I was over the bank edge and he said, you're not catching fish, what are you staring at? And there was a stick at the side of the embankment and it was stuck. And I went up and I flicked it and it went down the stream and I became mesmerised by watching the stick go down the stream. And he said, what's that? I said, that's life. We're all going to be stuck and somebody's going to come off, including me. Somebody's going to come into my life and is going to allow that thing that's holding me back to flick the stick and let me go down the stream and head to the ocean and go in any direction I want. And it's the same with that woman. It doesn't really matter all the things I did with that woman in my room. The way was that we broke the ice was when she came into my office, she came in and the door said the creative room. And that was the leverage I got. Because when she sat down, she kept looking at the sign and she says, what does that mean? I said, well, it should be called a boardroom. She said, boardroom? Oh, is that what this is? I says, no. Boardroom means B-O-R-E-D or B-O-A-R-D. Why would I bring leaders in here to talk about strategy and forecasting and where we're going and who's the customer we're not thinking about if I want to put them into a state of being bored? And she burst out laughing. As soon as you get them into state, you just ask a question. Because I said to her, let's get into your creative mind and see what life should be like. And then that's when I said to her, tell me how life is and how life should be. Then she presents to you, this is what life should be like, but it's not. Now she found answers of why she feels the way she feels. She's just got to make the adjustment. If she thinks she's in a life cycle that she can't have children because she's too old, what's the other choices it's open to us? But it's that word certainty. When people fixate on a blueprint and they live their life to that blueprint and they live it to certainty that that is how life must be, there's no peripheral perception there. It's one way, and this is what must happen. And until somebody comes along and gives them an alternative, then you won't be happy.
Flick the stick.
So the blueprint is your nervous system. Your life map is that. And it's your life wheel in terms of, and that's why it's important, just like the work that we're doing in colleges in Dubai, we're basically saying to the children, and they are children, when you leave school, can you make me a promise? And as they hold the life wheel, I say, can you continually over 1, 3, 5 and 10 years create a plan? You have a strategy for your studying, you have a strategy for going after your exams and being successful in your exams. But can you make sure that you never put the curling and cranes down? And can you make sure that for the rest of your life that you have a plan to grow? It doesn't stop when you leave university. You work and evolve and grow in every area of your life.
Really starts there. That's the starting line, really.
And they say, I've never thought like that. So it's the suggestions. The pathway mastery is about the power of a suggestion into the unconscious, right, and then letting the seed flourish and grow.
What would you say is the ultimate goal of the pathway mastery for leaders, for business? What's the ultimate destination?
Legacy. How do you get somebody to have a legacy mindset? When you get them to believe that they have a contribution to make, they can connect with many people and they can grow. It's the 3 most powerful needs out of the 6 needs. So once we take somebody to connecting, unconditional love, contribution and grow, and get them to realise that your life matters. We ask people, can you do more and be more? We also connect them to something that people forget about. I never forget about it. I never forget about my values. I had a different upbringing. So the concept of your parents who show you the values of caring, show you the values of hard work, but then when you start talking about things that you were part of, whether it's Christian groups, whether it's to do with Boys Brigade, whether it's to do with Duke of Edinburgh, you acquire a set of values and you're grounded with a foundation that never lose touch with these values. With education, I had to teach and develop myself a different way, so I did it through role models. And I became obsessed with role models. I became obsessed with mirroring and modelling. And you have to strip a human being bare to get them to stand back as an observer and say, is this really who you are? And the way I do it is we take the life wheel and we ask the question, can you tell me who you are? It's a very difficult question to ask somebody, and it's a very difficult question to answer, because I'll say it again, you are with yourself every moment in your awakened state. So why would you not be your number 1 priority? An investment, rather than leading a life where it's as if you're leading 2 lives because you're not truly authentic. So that's the pathway mastery is about how do we find the human being that's deep inside that can tell you, I'm going to tell you who I am. There was a video done once with a gentleman called Carlos. Carlos, done Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
And
Beautiful people.
It was a game stopper for me, because when I seen the video of Carlos saying, "What does Stevie Kidd do?" He puts his hand into your chest, takes your heart out, shows it to the world and said, "This is who you really are." And then he puts it back in and says, "What do you say?" That's pathway mastery. But when you put it back in, you've reconnected the person to their absolute values that they've forgotten about. And that's why that's vitally important. Legacy mindset, but you have to strip somebody bare to rebuild them back up, to get them to that point that they believe, my life counts, my life matters, and what I contribute to this planet Earth is going to matter.
So you say everything changes when you ask one question. What's the one question?
What's the one question to ask somebody that changes the game? It's a who am I question. You ask the who am I question, and I've got multiple techniques to break a pattern of a human being to ask that who am I question. We've done it. We've done it. We reached a peak Scotland. We've put 3 crosses in the ground. You've asked people to create a wish list to come into a 110-hour-a-week event. And then at the start, where do we start? We basically say, can you stand in that cross over there and tell me who you were? And then can you stand in that cross in the middle and tell me who you are? And then can you stand in that cross over there in the right-hand side and tell me who you want to become? We've all seen how that is a very emotional, uncomfortable.
Can be.
Doug experienced that. You experienced that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the whole manifestation of, which we'll talk later about, when you reach a peak Scotland. It's that concept when somebody's ready, when somebody's been rebuilt up to get to that point, it's about answering the 3 questions. Now, when people come in to see me within the business, and they're coming for an interview, and we do this with all levels within other companies, we'll do a 2-phased approach interview. We'll do a 26-week induction onboarding strategy. We'll do a proper interview strategy. We'll do an onboarding strategy. So the recruitment strategy is nailed, but it's nailed around the who am I question. So when people come in, and I've proven this for the last 4 decades, people play a movie before they come to the interview. And they come in and they sit down and they smile and they go, "Hi." And I go,
It's odd, isn't it?
"Hiya." And they sit there, and we might have 2 of the panel for either our own company or the other company sitting there. And they trust me with this process. And I say, "Is that your CV?" And they go, "Yep." And they give me it over, and I rip it up in front of them. And I put it down in front of them, and I say, "Can you tell me who you are, but don't associate to anything that's in the CV, please?" And it's a special, special moment. Because we're not laughing.
No.
We're trying to support you, because we don't want to employ the person behind the CV. We want to employ good people. And we don't believe we're seeing the true, authentic self sitting across the table.
Because you could write it on a piece of paper.
Exactly. And you can believe it.
And of course you can believe it.
And then if you keep playing it and repeat, or you just create a generalisation, then you delete language and then you distort it. If you've got somebody like me across the table, I will take you deeper and deeper and deeper to go into a deeper insight of what it is you're trying to tell me. We will get to a conclusion that you will tell me, that's not who I am. But what we do is, we ask people to leave. And we say, come back. But now I'm going to give you some advice and guidance of how I want you to come back. And they'll say, what do you want me to do? I want you to come back, and I want you to tell me about your values. I want you to tell me what's important to you. I want you to talk about passion. I want you to tell me what your plan is. But if you don't have a plan for every area of your life, I want you to start doing it now. And I want you to come in and start telling me what that looks like. Because you're working for a company who has got a serious growth plan, and we want to help our people, because we know we can't get there without you. Now, we can see that you have the accreditations and the skill set to take this job on, but we're going to start with you. And what we do is, when they come in, we say to them, thanks for illustrating the values. Once people come in, we basically say, once they start to talk about what's important to them and talk about their values, we'll then go across the table and say, what's our values? So then we connect you to your own values, and then we get you to become aware of our values. Then we go, what's the business values? Then we connect you to the customer's values. Then we connect you to the supplier's values. Then we connect you to connect it all up so that we're all going in the one direction and so we can see in the one direction. And one of the most beautiful things that we do in interviews to get people to self-discover is you can go through that process and go through a 26-stage induction. There's two things we do. We pass the onboarding pack over to the employee and we say, you own that. There's all the people that you need to enter into dialogue with over the next 26 weeks, or 26-stage induction, but you own that. You need to go and approach their people. You need to get everything signed off because you're going to come back in here in 12 weeks and we're going to be sitting here looking at everything signed off where you've joined everything up and you know exactly who you are. But see, when they come in after the 12 weeks, this is when we lock it in with the power of suggestion again. Can you tell me something? Yep. How was that experience? No other company does this. Never experienced this before? No. People do one interview, they give you a coffee and just tell you to start, and then you sit at a chair and you just go on with it. How do you feel? I feel excited about this role and I feel excited about my life. Okay. You ready for the next part? There's another part. And I go, yeah. And they go, go. I say, well, what's the ultimate role within this company that you want to grow into? And all of a sudden we're back to the staring again. And I say, think about it. How motivated are you going to be when you come in here every day if you know that you've got the job, you've discovered a lot about yourself, you've discovered a lot about everything and you've joined everything up. You're now sitting there because you're going to do the best you can do at that job. You're going to be supported, you're going to be coached. But also the next thing, there's something in the future that you can see that every day you're going to get closer to it because that's your role of succession. Nobody's ever done that to me before. And guess what improves? Culture, KPIs of the business, growth of the business, strategies executed, how people walk into the office or the place of work. Everybody's got a plan because everybody's got their own unique destination and journey of where they're going. But guess what they're connected to? Themselves. They're connected to everybody else and they're connected to the story of the business. And what makes it even more powerful is they're then given a voice. Contribute. Put your exception reporting in. Tell us what we should consistently improve on. And before you know it, people have walked into businesses before that I've owned and they've said, it's like Walt Disney in here. You feel the energy in here. What is it you do here? And that's what it is. Everything is energy. And if you've got everybody on that resonance of 8 to 10 brain hertz, daydream state, the most powerful daydream state. The daydream state is the most powerful state any human being can go into. And if you've got everybody in that state and turning up, you create this magical culture and you will accelerate and go to that place a lot faster than you're trying to do it on your own. Proven and tested many times.
So we've touched on the life wheel, and I know you use that quite a bit. It's in your book. You have the huge one I've seen in Richie Peak, Scotland. And can you expand on that a little bit? I know part of it is with the who are you question of remove that business company wedge, because it's really only an eighth of what you're looking at when you're completing that. So can you expand a little bit more on your use of the life wheel?
Framework. You need tools. You need framework with the psychologists that I've developed myself with over the years and still do, from Dr. Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, Professor Lipton, Dr. Bandler, John Laval, Stephen Covey. Being obsessed with all those psychologists' pieces of work, they give you tools, they give you a framework, but they also give you the framework, and it's like my book, the 1% Mindset book, which has got the life wheel in it. The concept of evolving and growing in a life wheel is it gives you a framework that you can have a scoring system. There's no right or wrong to it. Where I am right now, if somebody said to me, where are you in the world of endurance? I would say 2 out of 10. They would go, but wait a minute, you and Doug and Warren and Lesley are going to base camp and then Kilimanjaro next year. Correct. And it's 2 out of 10. And I would say because there's much, much more we can do. So it's like an elastic band, a life wheel. When you stretch the dimensions, it can't go back to the original dimensions. So a life wheel is a tool for you to be held accountable, to be coached, to be supported. But it's also, it allows you to stretch yourself. The human beings can become lazy.
Oh, yeah.
They can become comfortable, which is about the limbic brain. So when you operate from the limbic brain, just as I said to a global CEO the other week, I said to him, we could improve your life view in an area of your life. How are we going to do that? I said, well, you could come to base camp with us at the end of the year. But I said, before you answer, I know you've got a wee voice in your head now. It's telling you, don't listen to him. You're fine with you. Don't need to go there. Even although it's your dream, you're too busy to do that. Because it's the survival part of the brain. It keeps you comfortable. But then you go to the frontal cortex. When you go to the frontal cortex and you ask that question, if you're operating from there more than the limbic brain, you're then future thinking, you're then future pacing, and that's what a life wheel is. A life wheel is to take people to get them to understand your beliefs and your limitations, because when you coach somebody through a life wheel, you're asking questions to get them to go to a deeper place. That's a great start, but what could you really do? And then through questions with that person, before you know it, they evolve and grow. And when they're close to getting to that 10 in every area of their life, that 10 becomes a 1.
And that's the thing that, one of the 2 things I took, I think, most powerfully for me from the life wheel was that when you get where you thought you were going, you realize you've only just started.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, fits in with what you said, that you're at a 2 for endurance, even though we're taking on this huge thing that I'm not even sure has ever been done, to do them back to back like that.
I think what's magical about that is when you pick up the Reach Your Peak events brochure, there's actually, when we all put that together, there is actually an event in there that was it's never been done before, and it's called Beyond the Imaginable. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I remember when you
So
and
it's
I
actually
started mapping that out.
It's mapped out in there, and we forgot about it. And then this year we talked about doing it, but it was already there in the unconscious because we put it in a brochure.
Yeah.
And now years later we're
Manifesting it.
saying we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. If somebody had said to me years ago that you're going to be put your feet in Kilimanjaro 5 times and going to base camp twice, and then all of a sudden you're going to do them back to back, that's beyond my imagination. But the concept of development and growing, when you know yourself and you've got a real aspiration for getting excited about being grateful, living to your values, living by role models, being coached and supported, being around great people, again, going back to that emotional state, it will be hard for anybody to understand what we're saying today if you're living in a negative state. Because think about how you are when you're in a state that you don't want to be in, that makes you unhappy, angry, frustrated. Frustration actually means something needs to change. This is a concept of teaching people under emotional intelligence what all these states mean. And once you start to go through the concept of right down to chemicals that are released for your brain, even down to what that emotional state means, asked a question. I made a statement in a room to a board of directors where I was asked for a private meeting 4 weeks after I said it. And it's when you look at a life wheel and and I had the life wheel and I had it up on the screen, and as people were looking at the life wheel, I said to them, we can go to a broader context in the life wheel rather than looking at every lane. We don't need to look at where we were, where we are, and where we're heading. We could look at that life wheel and I could say 3 things and it'll have a real impact on you. And they said, on you go. And I said, bearing in mind, remember this. I wanted to take you 1, 2, 3 years into the future. Do you believe, we agree that where you are right now is not where you want to be? Everybody said yes. Do you believe with the work that you've undertaken with the Pathway Mastery that you're going to be 10 times the size of where you are with what we've done so far? Everybody in the room said, absolutely. I said, but do you want me to tell you what the Pathway Mastery is? On you go. I said, well, boom, first question come up. Are you happy? Second question come up. When were you at your happiest? Talking about your whole life. Third one come up. I said, I'm going to leave you when this one comes up. When will you be happier across every area of your life? And it had a profound impact with every single person in that room. So much so when I came back, 2 people asked to see me privately and said that the questions had such a profound effect. So it's not really just about mapping out your life wheel in every area and having a growth plan. It's actually what you talk about. How do you feel good for no reason at all? What is the secret to happiness? It starts with you. Looking in the mirror and have complete acceptance of who you are. Because once we get to that place, you better hold on and you better pull that down in that roller coaster, because we're about to start living. But it's about for the benefit of other people. It's not for you. Because when you self-discover who you are, guess what you've got the ability to do? All of a sudden you're looking around and your ability to read other people. And you can read other people where their blueprint is and where their life map is. And sometimes you can be sitting in a train or a bus or a coffee shop. Lesley's a master at it. She talks to more people than I do. But when she talks to people, she gets rapport like that. But even when you watch, when she walks away and you see how the people are, they're changed just by having a conversation with her.
Seen it.
So,
Yeah.
Seen it happen.
I like people.
Well, they like you.
They like you. But sometimes people just are drawn to her because it's that aura of
Even a
energy.
smile to somebody that hasn't had one for a while, or just a good morning, out walking the dog, you know what it's like. That's
No,
when
she'll
you
say
meet
to me,
people.
we done a Conic Hill once, 147 days in a row, and Lesley did something like 53 days or 47 days in a row. She asked if she could join me, and I said, yep. And it was a concept of proving that time didn't exist. So I wasn't allowed to delete my diary. I had to do the same things. I had to continue growing the business. But Conic Hill round trip for me is 4 hours. So what I'm trying to say to people with emotional state, that's what controls time. So if I'm very emotionally free and calm and free and within myself, I've got 27 hours in a day.
Right.
I've got more time than you.
Yeah,
Because
multiplies things.
Because
Yeah.
the state I'm in, time's going slow for me. So I can slow time down. The people that have developed me have taught me how to do this. Lesley would say to me at the weekend, oh, I'll come with you on Sunday. And I'll go, really? And she would, no, I'll come. And I'm like, okay then. Because I need to add another 3 hours on. Mm-hmm. Do you know why?
And talk to everybody.
Because she talks to everybody. So every time we were on the Conic Hill, I could go up and down twice, and she would just be getting to the top first of all. But that's a quality.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's a quality that every single person on the way up and the way down she was talking to, and you would say she made a difference to somebody's life, she's made a difference to somebody's day, and that's a gift.
It really is. So how does emotional intelligence fit into all of this?
The consultation of the Pathway Mastery. The people come into the office, we don't start with, who are you? People will come into the office and they'll sit down and they'll look across from me. And I'll just say to them right away, are you sitting comfortably? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll go, where's right now? And they'll go, what? Like right now, the present moment. Can you just point to that and tell me where that is? And they go, you're serious? I said, of course, because that's all we have. We only have right now. We only have this present moment. Everything out with that is an illusion. It's your imagination. So whether you live in the past or the present or the future, I want to know right now where you are right now. Where is it? So they have a good stab at it and they point to it. And then I say to them, ask you another question. Yep. Where's this time yesterday? And a lot of the time they look behind them and they'll point. And then I'll say, where's this time tomorrow? And where's this time next week? That's when it becomes a struggle. But they can't tell me where this time yesterday was and vaguely tell me where right now is. But when it starts to come to tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter, or going right to the end of life, they haven't thought that way. because human beings aren't engineered to think that way. The pathway mastery is about re-engineering how you think and feel. The place that I start with is time and space within your mind. I look at language, I look at your story, I look at where you're living in the past, present, future. I look at how much you are even thinking about the end. And I've done this quite a lot. People come in and there could be 4 chairs around the table, and I'll put a chair outside the office door. And at that point, I'll say to them, can you go out and sit in the chair outside? We need to do an exercise to fast track this. And they'll go and sit in the chair outside, and I'll say, close the door because I'm going to shout anyway. And they'll go, okay, and they'll shout in at me, and I'll go, what's the end? And they'll go up off a chair and open the door and go, end? I want you just to think about the end of life. So remember, where's the day? Where's right now? Where's this time yesterday? Where's this time tomorrow? But I'm just putting you outside the office door now just to go and get a wee sneak preview. Think what I'm doing there. I'm programming the unconscious. I'm programming their mind. They weren't thinking that before. But if I can start to get them associated to where time is and what time means for them, there was a time in humanity that time never existed. It was actually invented through sundial. I'm sure it was a country, China, because when I did the leadership event in Windsor Castle, I researched this. And the 2 things I researched for the leadership event in Windsor Castle was, I wonder what we were doing when there was no money or time. Because at one time in humanity, money never existed. Time never existed. So how were humans living back then? How did you describe time? Did it go fast? Did it go slow? So when people come in initially, you've got to ask questions before you move on to that question about emotional intelligence. Because you have to understand, is this person, so you pick up the life wheel, you get them to talk about every area of their life, you pay attention to what area they're focusing on first, then you ask them to put it in order, then you ask them the happiness question. Are you happy? When were you happiest? When will you be happier? Where's now? Where's yesterday? Where's tomorrow? What about the end? Then they come back and I go, bet you're confused. And they sit in front of me and they go, bet this is not going the way you thought it was going to go. And they start laughing. And they go, and I've had people contact me a couple of days later and said, look, you need to give me a couple more days because I really am confused, because you're scrambling the unconscious, you're scrambling the subconscious mind. If you think about when you come in to Reach Repeat Scotland, sometimes when people come back, the room has moved to a different position. You've got to sit in different chairs, come back at 3:13. When did you start tomorrow? 5:07. What? So when you scramble everything up, you're taking people out of comfort and taking them into the unknown and uncomfortable. The great thing about emotional intelligence for me is once we get to a certain position within the framework of what we're doing with somebody, we're getting an understanding of how quickly they want to get to the destination personally and professionally. But what we have to do is we have to go into this middle part, which is emotional intelligence. And basically what we're doing is we've got trust, we've got honesty, and we've got rapport. And what we're doing now is we're asking people, where do you live emotionally most of the time? Now in the book, in the 1% Mindset book, I work with people who have got the discipline because they want emotional freedom. They want emotional freedom because they know when they're emotionally free, they're going into that gamma, theta, alpha state. And that's where they can create and be innovative, where they get more time as well. And what we do is we do a 1 to 4, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, and it's a spreadsheet. Let's see if it opens up at the page. Oh, there we go. That's the spreadsheet. So people go into that spreadsheet and every hour on there, imagine doing that. Every hour on there with Pathway Mastery, you've got to put a number down that represents how you feel. There's no right or wrong to it. But if you're calm, 1 to 4, if it's 5 to 7, and if you're in a place that you're not controlling your emotions and you're not in a good place, you mark that 8 to 10. Then what they do is they colour code it red, amber, green. Then they send it to me. And then when they're sitting with me, they look at the screen and go to last Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And then all we do is we go back in the timeline, tell me what's happening. We look at it as an observer of your life. And then when we look at that observer of your life, we look at it and then we say, what's the different choices you could have made? But where does that automatic unconscious trigger come from? And 9 times out of 10 people go back and they go, well, it actually started a way back here and it ends up being 10 years ago. So we scramble that, we erase it, and we lock in the new decision that we're going to make before. So what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal, which is really satisfying for me, is people can come to me and after 9, 12 months, they're living with greens. Right. Because nothing affects them. Everything in the internal world they've now understood. They've understood the unconscious, subconscious and conscious mind. And they understand their beliefs, limitations, they understand all the triggers, because everything is a reflection of them. To become obsessed of being a fantastic human being, because you have to ask yourself, why would you want to do this? Because you want to have a legacy, but it's about being a fantastic human being, which is about serving, giving, growing. You're irrelevant because your life is a masterpiece, because it's about helping everybody else.
So, Stevie, we've talked about the life wheel. We've talked about personal growth. How does this roll into the business side of things?
Observing people, observing business, being obsessed with human behaviour, being obsessed with neurology is what my life has been about. My objective is, on my tombstone it will say, this is somebody who came into planet Earth to touch as many hearts as minds as he could, to set people free. But there's 2 sides to it. One is the self-discovery of setting people free by giving them and supporting them a growth plan and getting them to understand themselves. But then you've got the professional side. All my life we've been coached. I was in hospital 18 with exhaustion in my first company, and from that moment in time I said I would be coached in multiple areas of my life for the rest of my life. So it's powerful coming to Pathway Mastery, because we coach but we're coached. But then it comes to the frameworks. When COVID happened, we wrote the first 1% Mindset book. When COVID happened, we done a 12-week documentary or a 12-week masterclass to help people around the world overcome who are we, because I never thought for a minute a plane would be grounded.
For free.
We then,
exactly. For free.
But then we went back to Business Mastery and we went back to Tony Robbins. And we went to Tony Robbins and says we need to rip up our business model. COVID's happened and we need to reinvent. And basically what we did is we were developed to understand at a deeper insight level. 2007 was the first time I went to Tony Robbins. And we went back at COVID and we became obsessed with advanced business mastery. And what that is think about this. Business Force 1, for any business that's watching this, do you have, it's a yes or no answer, but do you have a clear roadmap? It's not a business plan. Do you have a strategy mapped out right across the wall of where you are and where you're going to, what you're going to commit to doing in the next 1, 3, 5 years? It's only yes or no. You've got to ask yourself questions like, why did you set up business in the first place? Why in business now? And why in the business in the future? There's a concept of being an operator to an entrepreneur. Operator is that you're in the trenches. You can't see. You're in an emotional state you don't want to be in. You're not given the reason in business to make money and grow. But then you've got the entrepreneur, but then that's the life cycle that we take people through. Business Force 2 is innovation, challenging reality. Want to be a champion of the sector because that's where we've taken you. Your mindset and operating from the higher brain is that you want to do more and be more, but you want to be the example. You want to be seen as a leader. Your brand wants to be seen. Then you go to global marketing. Who knows about you? And it's about the multiple channels. This is global marketing for the Pathway Mastery. Then you've got sales mastery, Business Force 4. How are you selling? Number 5, financial management. From board meeting right the way through to the individual that's leading a division. Are you doing exception reporting? And you get every possible avenue covered with financial management, with everything getting covered in exception reporting. But then you've got everybody within the business. Remember the recruitment strategy. Everybody within your business has a brain that is constantly never-ending improvement. It's all they'll accept. And number 7 is business raving fans. Instead of you chasing the business, people are now coming to you because your customers are talking about you. So you put people through a framework that it's the framework that leads the business because it's all mapped out in front of you. And the idea is to have all these lanes going at one time. And there's 2 timelines. You do lane 1, go and do the next 12 months on your own and go and meet yourself at the end of the finishing line. But jump over to lane 2. You're coached by the Pathway Mastery. You're developed to understand neurology and emotions. You're developed to grow. But then you use the framework for business mastery. Then you go and lead that person down to the finishing line. The beauty of it is become the observer of the two people. And all I'm asking you right now is to turn the two people around and look at one another. What one are you more drawn to and what one's going to achieve more? We know that. What you've got to ask yourself is what's stopping you from doing it alone, but knowing that the other option is doing what the Pathway's done for nearly 3.5 decades, doing it with support, because that one you'll achieve much, much more. And the final question, Doug.
So if everything ended today for you, what would you want to be remembered for?
There's two sides to that coin. The podcast about the Pathway Mastery is to give you a sample of how your life could change by self-discovering, making yourself irrelevant to touch hearts and minds of other human beings on the planet. And what do you want your legacy to be? My legacy is simple. I want to get to as many people as I can in my lifetime, whether it's through a podcast, whether it's through YouTube channels, whether it's through a website, whether it's through social media, whether it's working with companies and then having an impact in a board that then has an impact in the thousands of people that work for that business. Because what happens with the Pathway Mastery, it stimulates and motivates change. It's about constant improvement. But my question is not about what I'm going to do in my life or how I want to be remembered. The concept of the question is that even in consultation stage, when people come in for that consultation, we go there. We go there at the final part of the consultation, because when we say to people, how do you want to be remembered? We have a chair in that 4-chair table, and one of the chairs is the end. And when they go underneath the chair, there's an envelope they pull out, and the envelope is, quieten the mind and ask yourself this question. Will you have any regrets? And there's a pause, and the answer is always yes. And that gives you leverage to come back to the starting line and say, look, do we want to really take our life serious, because we've got one crack at this? So we declutter the mind of all the things that are holding you back. And there's an exercise that I do actually where I stand up. And when people watch me standing up, I jump to the left-hand side. And as you jump to the left-hand side, they look at you and they go, what are you doing? I said, that's as easy as it gets for you to move your life forward. What are you doing then? I says, I'm getting myself out on my own road, because I've had to do that in my past. For you to get to the end and really map out how you want the end to be, you will then come back to the present and you will do the work. Because what will happen is if you don't, you become angry and frustrated, because you'll realise you're running out of time. So how do you want to be remembered? And thinking about death frequently is something that will change your life, because you'll become grateful, you'll have gratitude, you'll be grateful for every single day, you will not miss any moments, you will look for magic moments in every single day. And if you can touch the hearts and minds of as many human beings as you can, even if they're strangers, you won't just change their life, you'll change your life, and you'll create a legacy beyond your imagination. My work and our work in the Pathway Mastery is, if we get to as many people as we can to share this knowledge and tools and wisdom, and they choose to adopt that strategy, and that gets rippled out across the world will be a better place.
Absolutely.
100%.
If we're going to give a final message and we're going to close off episode 1, which is what is the Pathway Mastery, what would I want you to take from this? This is a book. It's a book that's got 4 decades of my life. There'll be more books, but I'm going to reflect it in you. What's your book called? And what I want you to pay attention to right there in that moment is what the Pathway Mastery does for you. Because see that voice in there that's telling you, oh, I couldn't do a book. Oh, I don't know what my book is. Oh, what have I got to say? You have got a lot to say and you have got a lot to contribute. So what I'd advise you to do is keep watching, let the knowledge and the facilitation of information in, and say to yourself, what if this did re-engineer how I think and feel? What would change for me? And he talked a lot about helping other people because he can. How does it feel when you open a door for somebody? What does it feel like when somebody asks you, I would love a coffee? and you go and make them a coffee, what does it feel like when you help another human being, what you've done in the past, for no reason at all? Start living, but make your life about other people. We will continue to put information out in more episodes. We're doing one on Wednesday, which is about international events, Everest Base Camp in Kilimanjaro. But don't look at us. Think about this. What mountains out there that you've not climbed yet? But we believe more in you believe in yourself. And that is the power of the pathway mastery. Why Lesley stops and talks to people going up the Conic Hill, because even when she's talking to people, she's giving messages. When Doug's talking to people and he's giving messages and he's listening to what they want to do with their life, the concept of what we're doing is we're passing on information, because see, when you're not with us, it's going deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you go to sleep and you wake up, it's like an earthquake. The plates go back into a place and they become fixed. And you'll know when you've made a change in your life. Because when you look at something that had a feeling that you didn't like, and then all of a sudden you look at it again and you have a different feeling, that's because you've made a change unconsciously. So start making your life about you. When you get up in the morning, look in the mirror and give yourself an affirmation. Give yourself a compliment. Compliments is something that we don't like. When you start putting yourself first, then you can be more for others. That's my final message. Thanks for listening.